There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. And I am so excited that today we are thrilled here at Magnet Culture to be talking about avoiding the disconnect and building stronger connections between leaders and our frontline teams. This is one of our specialty areas of really getting to know the workforce. And so we're going to dive into that today with our queen of connection, Shelonda Darling. And so I'll give you more information about her in just a minute. But cannot wait for us to dive into this because today we're going to talk about effective strategies for maintaining an employee minded leadership approach where you always thinking about your team and putting them first. And we're going to learn how to foster a deeper connection with the team and enhance communication, trust, and workplace harmony. And as you all have seen these last few months of our webinars, we've switched from a more training focused or talk at you approach to more of a fireside chat. So I've been bringing on our trainers and speakers and partners to talk with me about these topics instead of talking at you all. So I hope you enjoy that. And we're excited about this switch as well. And we may go back and forth in the future, but these next few are going to be some partnership webinars. Speaking of our webinars, don't forget if you haven't subscribed already at youtube.com/magnetculture, that is where we have all of our webinars posted after they've been recorded. So within a few days of this session, you'll see the recording available there that you can share with your team. And if you subscribe, you'll actually get a notification each month or two when we post a new webinar or a new great training video that you can share with your leadership team as well. So be sure to put any questions that you have probably in the Q&A box. There is a Q&A box but at the bottom of your screen here on Zoom. So go ahead and find that button. And then if you have questions throughout the session, you can pop them in there. I'll try to monitor that over here in real time, but we certainly have time at the end for us to hopefully answer at least a few of your questions. And be sure to stay until the end because, as you all know, we always have a special offer just for those people who are on these webinars with us. So you don't want to miss that. And before we dive in, I want to formally introduce my friend and colleague, Shelonda Darling. She is one of our very popular and highly sought after keynote speakers. You have probably seen her out on the speaking circuit at maybe one of your industry conferences. And she also trains coast to coast our clients going into the organization, making the managers more effective, and really equipping them with the tools to become retention champions for their team. So she has got decades of work world experience, and she sits right on the cusp of being a Gen X and a millennial. So she understands the way it's always been done and was kind of raised by those workers. And yet she'll still tell you, well, sorry, there's an app for that now. So she gets the new mindset and new ways of doing business as well. So can't wait for you to hear more from her. And it is time to get started. Welcome, everybody. All right. So Shalonda, let's start with something I feel kind of silly asking, but you are, and I've known you forever practically, you are such a natural connector with others.
Hmm.
And I just want to ask first, like, is that just because you like people in general?
You know what? It's so funny that you would ask that, Cara, because Cara knows better than anyone for everyone on the call with us today. And welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you. But Cara knows, has known me since I was a 16-year-old girl sharing a stage with her in our local high school. But I genuinely love people. I am a people person. I am the person that is going to cheer for you even when I don't know you. I'm the person that when we're walking down the street in an unfamiliar town, I'm going to say hello to you. I'm the person who's going to say, girl, love the hair with two snaps. I am that person. I genuinely walk through the world looking for the best in people with a desire to make people feel like they are unstoppable and invincible and incredible. And it's just naturally baked within who I am as a human being. Now, I will tell you, as a mother of 3 teen and tween girls right now, that 16-year-old girl all. She might be on my not like list currently, but for the most part, yes, I love people and I love to make others see in themselves maybe what make what I see in them, maybe what they don't see in themselves. So yes, genuinely, I naturally am built as a people person for sure, Kara.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to make sure we don't intimidate everyone or people don't start dropping off the call like, oh, okay, well, if I'm not like that,
If I'm not
naturally,
crazy like Shelonda, then this is not going to work for me. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
then this webinar is maybe not for me. So
yes.
so think about a few things that people can do and that we even teach in our classes, right? Of reducing judgment and
Mhm.
assuming positive intent of others instead of immediately thinking, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing or they're a jerk and did it on purpose, right? That kind
Yes,
of approach. And instead, really believing that people have good in them and you can learn from anybody no matter what their
absolutely.
upbringing and their their age. Even I love to learn from younger people and from people with more wisdom and experience than I have. So do you have
Yes.
any tips that maybe other people along that
Yeah.
line that they can
Listen, I
do?
didn't invent this, but staying curious always. I always come to a new relationship, a team challenge, a new environment. Any of those situations, I come into with a level of curiosity. I want to observe. I want to feel the vibe and the energy of a room or a relationship with another human being, and I want to meet them where they are. It is not my desire to walk in and feel like you just, you're one of those memes where a truck just went past you 90 miles an hour and your hair is blown out, right? It is my desire to connect. And so in the desire to connect, it is most important that I know what you're looking for so that I come to you with that level of energy. Sometimes I'm connecting with fellow Shalondas, right? So I'm coming with them with the high fives and the hugs, right? Absolutely. And then
Yeah,
there's other times where I notice that I am coming to a person who might be a little more reserved, who might be a little skeptical of me even from the outset, right? So I'm coming in more with a gentle spirit, more with a kind spirit, more with a desire to know them better so that I can react and adjust my behavior and communication style to a way that's going to relate to them. There's nothing worse than walking in with an attitude of it's my way or the highway and everybody here better adapt to me. That is not the way to win hearts and minds. Definitely walking into a space, a team environment, a conflict even, is to be curious and to learn more about the folks that you are engaging with.
yeah, couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I find that today the biggest culprit of connection, not culprit, what's the word? The barrier to
Ooh,
connection
yeah, yeah,
is just lazy managers. And what I mean is like it's not their fault. A lot of managers are great and they know how to be great. They want to be great, but they're just pulled in so many directions and stretched
yes.
so thin. And so I would say number one, a key to connection, just as kind of an asterisk for this whole presentation, is if we can, as organizational leaders, rework the workloads of our managers to let them be managers again, which means connect with their people and have time for their people. And we'll talk today about checking in with your people. So I want to put that on the forefront that we know that's a barrier and we know that that can actually turn off a lot of people, especially new
Mm,
hires, from wanting to stay at the organization because their manager's too busy for them. And that can cause a lot of this disconnect that we see. With that said, another big cause that I am seeing of disconnect is it almost feels like the management level folks and then our front line, because most of the clients that we work with here at Magnet, most of our clients have lower wage frontline hourly tethered workers, tethered meaning they have to be at a certain location at a certain time to do the job.
mm,
And I see a socioeconomic divide where
sure.
it's almost like they're living in two different worlds, from
Mm,
access to information and resources and support system, even with their children, right? You have a snow day or an e-learning day or a sick kid, and a lot of times someone who's on salary with more flexibility and more money has more options and
Absolutely.
more
Yeah.
resources than our frontline who may not have as big of a pool or village to help with that day. So
Hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts kind of on what are some of the common lifestyle gaps that we need to just make sure. I'm bringing this up because we need to make sure that the leaders, no matter how high up the ladder they go, they still remain very employee minded of the
Hmm.
reality and the world that those that we're trying to attract and retain are living in every day. What are you seeing, and then how's that impacting retention too?
Absolutely. So I think what you're going to hear me say over and over again today is that you have to know your people.
Ding ding
Know
ding.
your people. If you all leave today with anything that I've said, when we ask you in the chat, what is your number one takeaway? It is know your people. I want you to understand that leadership is not a one size fits all experience, right? Leading me and leading Cara would be an interesting dynamic. She has different needs and different desires. I have different needs and different desires. She has things that motivate her that wouldn't motivate me. I have things that I'm motivated by that she wouldn't even think twice about, right? So it's critical at what a great leader does is gets to know each one of their team members individually, uniquely, and responds to them in a way that is going to be catered to their leanings, right, to their skill set and to what is necessary for them to be successful in their job. So this, if there was, I believe in history, there has been kind of a one size fits all approach to leadership. We go and read a leadership book from John Gordon and we're like, all right, everybody's on the energy bus. Let's get with it, right? There are great nuggets to take from anything like that, but also understand that you are leading human beings. This is not Star Wars and the clones, right? We are not letting one person drop off and just putting another white helmet in the line to keep the march going, right? These are individual human beings with different stories, different home lives, different worries that they go to sleep with. I said to a leader one time, I said, when you go to bed at night, what do you worry about? I asked a Fortune 500 CEO that. I said, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night? Because you just naturally assume that a person who's a Fortune 500 CEO has different worries when they go to bed tonight than I'm going to have based upon my lifestyle and the worries that I have, right? And so getting to know one another on that basic common human level is so critical. I think I see it show up, the disconnect. I see that show up frequently when we kind of forget where we came from, right? Like, I think
Mm.
sometimes we in our 30s, 40s, 50s, as we have climbed the ladders, right? And we've paid our dues, we forget what it was like when we were 19 just trying to make enough money for the party that evening, or
Yeah.
we were 21 looking to cover the bar tab, right? Like, we forget that we once lived the lives and the lifestyle, more than likely, of many of the people that we're leading. We maybe we're in our third home with the finished basement and the upstairs and the downstairs, right? Versus when we had the starter home, the ranch with 900 square feet, right? Like, these are the things that I think we forget. We forget where we came from. I think it's this shows up in all worlds, right? I'll give you like the corniest example. In rap songs, you will hear rappers discuss the struggle that people in their neighborhood now can't follow them or believe in them because they left and they never came back. It's like you're not allowed to continue to progress. So let me say that it's not a problem that there's a gap. You've earned it. It's been hard fought, right? It has been your success in your career that has allowed you to continue to progress and elevate and grow. And as human beings, we continue to progress and elevate and grow in our personal lives. So perhaps that's what that we're having children, we're having a family, or we're not because we choose not to, right? These are all those life decisions that we can't bucket it into. We're all looking for the white picket fence with the boy and the girl and the dog, right? We are not all looking for that life. So getting to know your people so that you can customize your leadership approach is critical to avoid the disconnect so often seen between leadership and the front line. And let's not even talk about how it gets even worse as the gap gets wider, right?
Yes.
So there's one thing when you're the supervisor of the front line, because it hasn't been too long since you were on the front line. So you empathize with the struggle. You want to be the voice to the voiceless. You want to fight the good fight, right? In all of those aspects. But then you become a manager and you get busy. Now all of a sudden you're leading supervisors who are leading frontline workers. You're one level away, right, from where you were when you were so empathetic and so sympathetic, because now you've got different levels to answer to. And then don't let you become a director, a vice president, and so on and so on. All of your concerns and all of your focuses are asking you to change, but never forget the front line when you were still trying to figure out, how am I going to put gas in my tank tomorrow to make it to work? Don't forget that that is still the struggle for some of the folks that you're leading on the front line. I also would say, goodness, Cara, I could talk about this forever, but I would also say one of the silliest examples is we love to give out a Starbucks gift card, don't we? I mean, it's like the answer to everything. Like, all right, it's employee recognition week. We would like to recognize Cara with a Starbucks gift card. And Cara's like, number one, I don't like coffee. Number two, it's intimidating to even walk in the place. How do you order? It's tall, it's grande. I'm confused by the lingo. I'm not even sure what I would get there, right? Like these
Right.
are the things we blanket our approach to an audience when ultimately you're dealing with individual human beings. So I would implore you to get to know your people.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've got so many thoughts on unpacking that.
Yeah.
One is I'm going to back you up with some data here because Emotional Intelligence 2.0, the book, the folks at Talent Smart, friends of mine actually now, which is pretty cool. They had proven that as you go up the ladder in those roles you said, supervisor, manager, director, VP, executive, um, first, your emotional intelligence grows when you manage the front line directly. But after you become disconnected from them on the org chart, then EQ, your emotional intelligence, tends to drop off if you don't
Mm,
stay aware of that connection because you start to worry about spreadsheets and meetings, strategy and shareholders or board members and things like that. And you're not worried about what the front line is worried about, even from a business standpoint, not to mention the price of gas.
mm,
Because we know, I mean, I remember 10 or 15 years ago, the price of gas spikes and it comes down and then it spikes and it comes down. And I have known for years that that has a big impact on lower wage workers, far more than it is on anyone who would be in a director level role or above. I mean, anybody can have financial troubles and struggles, but we
sure.
know that those who are really living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to meet that cost of living in their own town, that price of gas going up means that they have to take those 15, $20 from their grocery bill and pull back on something else or pay a bill late because of that. And I'll clarify one thing too. I Shalonda spot on with like remember where you came from. But I'll be perfectly honest. I grew up middle class. And so I have had to listen and learn and read about folks who've grown up in poverty situations or are still living in a under the cost of living wage level,
Mhm.
right? That they are struggling because that isn't where I came from. Yes, I came from being broke as a 20 something, I
Right.
remember those days, but I did not have to struggle to feed my family, nor did my family struggle to feed me during that time. And so, if you haven't had that experience, I think another level of connection is really listening, reducing that judgment, and really getting to know what are folks' struggles, that you don't want to get too personal if they don't want to talk about it, but really
Sure.
listen and stay out in the forefront of that. Don't just make assumptions or just think, well, they're just bad with money, because maybe they've overcome
Mm,
really tough obstacles and are still struggling, but man, have they done a great job from where they truly came from that maybe you never even had to deal with, right? Different
right.
obstacles. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the quote, you never know what someone else is walking through,
Oh,
right? And so it's critical. I find it interesting. I work with a lot of companies and they'll talk about doing employee surveys. And I get with them and I'm like, listen, I get the gist of doing an employee survey, but we realize that we're doing a survey because we're not getting to know one another. Right.
mm,
Like that's the nature of I'm the CEO and I don't really know the struggle of the front line. So let's do an employee survey. And then better yet, let's then convince them that they can participate anonymously, allow the floodgates to open for them to deliver their opinions, feelings, and concerns, and then do nothing
yep,
with it. And then do
yeah,
nothing with it. Like, how can you build trust and rapport where your front line actually desires to work for you? If you are not following through, if you ask for feedback and then don't follow through with the information you're given. So I would say if you do not have the capacity, okay, to get to know everyone individually as much as you would like to, and you utilize the strategy of let me do some pulse surveys or quick check-ins or huddles to kind of garner and do a pulse check, just make sure that when something is identified, we then begin to pull back the layers there and dig deeper. Don't let something just be identified and then forgotten about, right? Because there's nothing worse as an employee to put myself out there and then feel like no one recognized, appreciated, or valued my contribution.
yeah.
So definitely acknowledging, especially when someone in a vulnerable situation, of course, acknowledging that share and that trust so that you build a space where people feel like they can tell you about their struggle
Mm.
rather than just the old mantra of leave your personal stuff out. Once you walk in the front door of this office, I don't want to hear
Oh,
nothing about your child care woes and you can't pay your rent this month and you're eating ramen noodles in 5 different styles because that's all you can afford for dinner. I don't want to hear nothing about that. Once you walk in here, you're an employee and we're focused on work, right? No, we're in an era, friends, where we are asking people to come in as they are, to, as they say, bring your full self to work. Now, listen,
yes.
we can debate on that, Karen, whether I'm like, oh no, maybe you keep some of it for yourself, but bringing your full self to work. And you can't say bring your full self to work, but then also say I don't want to deal with the baggage that comes along. Those two things don't align. So yes, I think it's critical to create an environment where employees feel like they can celebrate their biggest wins with you and also share
Yeah.
and endure their biggest losses as well.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of the Generation Z mindset as well. So you all thought millennials were pretty open book, at the office, and now Gen Z is bringing their whole dang self to work.
The whole
Okay,
dang self.
the dang self. And this is the group for anybody who doesn't know the timeline just off the top of your head. Right now, they are about 27 years old and under. So this group, Gen Z, in case for folks watching the recording later, is the group born between 1997 and 2012-ish. So right
Mm.
now it is those middle school, high school, and early adults that are out there, and they are very much expecting their managers to have connection with you. They want to trust you. They want to be able to tell you anything, the good, the bad, the ugly, as she said. And so you may have to go out of your comfort zone, because I know some of you are probably shaking your head, rolling your eyes, saying, not going to happen. I'm not going there. But I think all leaders moving forward, if you want to remain effective and you want to keep the people that you hire, you're going to have to get more comfortable at personal conversations. I don't
Mm,
expect you to be a therapist, which some managers tell me, you don't have to go get a therapy degree. Be prepared for someone to come and confide in you and be looking for mentorship, even on a personal level, more so than on a professional level. And so I just want you to not put up a wall and say, oh, I don't talk about that, or I can't help you, or we don't talk about that at work, because the new workforce is going to want to have those conversations, particularly around even mental health.
mm,
I'm seeing more and more folks, not just Gen Z, but also older, more experienced workers too, that are saying, I'm going to talk to my boss about my mental health struggles so that they understand where I'm at. And then we can work on a schedule and a workload or adjustments that are going to help me be my best self at work and make those different adjustments. So just making sure that we have the emotional intelligence and the communication skills in order to be prepared for this new workforce. Because if we say we're not going to do that, or that's not how I'm going to manage, then it's going
mm.
to get really tough to keep those people. Okay.
Yeah.
And we have, if you've not already been there, magnetvault.com is our hidden treasure trove just for our clients and followers, that you can go into the vault and download all kinds of great resources. One of them is a get to know you sheet. So
Yes.
instead of
So good.
blanketing people, like Shalonda said, with like coffee gift cards, maybe they want gas gift cards or a Target gift card or Walmart that they can use for shopping, for groceries, or for gas,
Mhm.
those types of things. And it asks questions about them, about their family, their hobbies, their priorities, where do they like to shop, or how do they like to be recognized. That's a great downloadable thing. And also, I want to shift the conversation, Shalonda, over to check-ins. Like,
Oh,
how
yeah.
how do you talk to your people? Because we also have in the vault an employee check-in guide that has some questions for you, that are more open-ended. And then it also allows you, it's almost like a journal where you can put, I talked to Shalonda on this day about this, and you can track that a little bit. So if you're not in the habit of regularly checking in with folks in a genuine way, that's a
Mm.
great tool for that too. So what are your thoughts on kind of check-ins?
Absolutely. This is one of the things that in many of my sessions, I always ask leaders at the end of the session to give me their I commit to statements. So, any of you in the chat who may have sat with me in a room, we normally end every session with I commit to. And more, 9 times out of 10, it shocks me because I feel like this is the thing they've got to be doing, but this is the thing that time does not allow them to do. They will say, I commit to genuine, intentional, scheduled check ins with every one of my direct reports. So we always give the joke here at Magnet Culture, for those of you who have been around us a while, don't give the drive by, right? Don't be the, I'm walking on my way to the cafeteria and I'm like, hey, Kara, how you doing? So glad to see you. If you need anything, give me a holler. All right, bye-bye. Don't give me that one. That's not a check-in. That literally that we can't even mark that down as a valuable conversation that even occurred, right? What this
Even,
looks like,
I'm
please.
sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that drive-by check-in, when I talk about that in training, can't tell you how many people realize like they're actually doing more harm than good by looking so busy. Like, I don't have time for you. That's the perception. Holler if you need me. Holler if they need you
They
because you
definitely
don't
are
have
not
time
hollering.
for them. So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, yes. And the it's also the concept that I shouldn't, I would be burdening them. I shouldn't have anything to ask because obviously they're on the move, on to bigger and better and more important things. So my question of, hey, listen, the toll price has really impacted me this year working for your company. Can we discuss the possibilities of some toll reimbursement, right? Like, to give you the most random example, but it's the idea of my concerns and just a genuine check-in with me about maybe everything's great. Like, don't you love a great check-in when everything is like, listen, firing on all cylinders. I got some ideas. I would love to tell you more about where I want to go in this company. And I would love to talk with you about how I can get there, right? We love those check-ins. Those get us fired up as well. But the key is it's got to be intentional. It's got to be scheduled, and it's got to be pre-thought, right? For me, what I'm looking for out of a great leader is they have scheduled in advance a consistent check-in cadence. Whatever that looks like for you, is that once a quarter? I pray to you, it's more than once a quarter, but maybe you got a lot of direct reports, so I'm not judging, right? But once a quarter at a minimum, right? But ideally, is that a once a month check-in? Is that a bi-weekly check-in? My goodness, is it a weekly check-in? Like, that would be incredible as well. Probably not a daily check-in in the ongoing career path, but in the early days, it better be a daily check-in, if not an hourly check-in. Okay. So let's make sure that we have a great pulse and a great read on where our employees are in the employee life cycle. But yes, an intentional check-in. So what I would love to see when I come into an organization is I see quarterly check-in with Cara, my boss, right? And I see it on my calendar and it repeats every 90 days, right? And I'm like, okay, excited. Because now I begin to say in my mind, okay, so I'm going to start kind of cataloging the things that I want to talk about in that meeting. What I'm also hopeful for as we get closer to the date at hand is that Cara has provided some talking points around things that she wants to discuss as my leader. Hey, listen, I plan for us to cover A, B, C, and D. Then I would love for you to bring forth your concerns, comments, questions, and then we'll wrap it up at the end with our takeaways and our commitments to one another. Because we're in this together, leader and team member, to get the best out of one another, so then ultimately the company gets the best out of us as well. The company does not benefit paying me an every 2-week paycheck if I'm miserable and providing no real value to the role that I've been hired for. The company wants me to love my job. The company wants me to show up every day as my best self. So how can I, as a leader, provide an environment where all of my direct reports feel seen, heard, and valued? And it's critical to have those regular check-ins, again, scheduled, intentional, and set aside time, right? It's not something that you do while you're on the go. So making sure that is a time that is set, right? Especially for them.
I love it. We got some great questions and comments in the chat and the Q&A. One that I want to repeat that Brett said is, don't schedule check-ins and then postpone.
Ooh,
So
Brett,
you want to be
yes,
realistic that if you try and say, I'm going to do it twice a month, and then you find yourself postponing, then you've got to go to once a month,
that's
because
it.
you're going to come across as not reliable. And I'd love to go down the trust path next, Shalonda, with that,
Sure.
because a friend of mine, David Horsager, he runs a company called Trust Edge. And I heard one of the best phrases ever from him keynoting recently at a conference. And he said, your staff want predictable access to their leaders.
Mm.
Right? I mean, it was
Ding,
like,
ding, ding.
yeah, it took everything we taught about checking in and it made sense for me even more, like click of, that's why you check in. I mean, yes, to get to know your people, but if you think about it, especially if you have folks out on the floor, right? Healthcare, manufacturing, construction, out in the field, out not sitting at a desk with email and things like that.
That's it.
What, they're just supposed to wait until you swoop by and ask them if they need anything, and then they weren't ready to answer it, or they didn't have their list with them and things like that. So people want predictable access to that.
Mm.
So so really talking with the managers about the need for this connection with today's new workforce. Somebody was asking, how do we get the managers to make time for this? Well,
Mm.
in all of our classes, we focus on shifting the manager mindset to be more employee minded and to be that retention champion. Because if they're losing staff, that's your play. That's your,
Yes.
if you want to keep your people, then you have got to make time for these regular check-ins because they want predictable access to you, and you've got to start building trust and transparency and better communication with folks. So, Shalonda, what do you see with trust and
Mm,
teams and leaders today? Like, how do we foster that culture of trust and keep it? Because trust comes and goes. So, how do we
yes.
maintain? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love the predictable access to your leader. There is no greater impact. Um, here's an example I love to share in my sessions. I talk about teachers. Any teachers on the call, like let us know in the chat. I love teachers as an example of workforce retention and turnover, because I want you to think about a teacher as a boss, right? And then I want you to think that the teacher as the boss or the leader is leading this classroom of 20 students, right? And they are teaching whatever freshman biology. And so they're going to have this same set of 20 or so students, right? They've got to guide them through a curriculum, right? So they have a goal, they have a business goal that they need to land to, they have a defined time that they need to get to it, and they have quarterly grades structured on how close are they, how are they landing along the path to that eventual goal, which is the final grade of the class, of the course, right? And then guess what? Teachers do it all over again, right? So you don't hear teachers saying, oh my gosh, retention and turnover, like my goodness. What teachers are saying is, I get 9 months to impact this set of 20 human beings. And then I'm going to release them into the wild, which is the next year of their education. And you know what? Sometimes those folks will come back to me for mentorship or guidance or questions or concerns, because I have built an environment and a relationship with that student where they feel like they can, right? And so the idea here is that you want to create an environment where no matter where someone goes in their career, maybe they move in the company, maybe they leave the company altogether, but you want to be such an amazing leader that that teammate would come back to you for advice about anything regarding your career, but then also sometimes just advice about life in general. That's when you know you've crossed a trust threshold, is when you're not just being asked about work. You're not just being asked, how do I get better at this particular task or what you pay me for? But you're actually being asked about topics more centered around mentorship, like how do I be a better teammate? How do I be a better communicator? How do I be a better leader? How do I be a better friend? How do I be a better spouse? How do I be a better brother, sister, etc.? Right? So when it comes to trust, for me, there's a quote out there that floats that you can tell the sign of a good leader when they are not when they don't show up that day or they're not present and the team continues to operate, right? So you've created an environment where people know their role and they show up every day and perform in that role to the best of their ability. And so creating an environment for trust is that I know even if my leader is not here today, I still know how to show up and give my best and make an impact at my organization. Now, I will tell you there, to your point, Cara, the biggest flex you have as leaders when people give us a pushback of, but where do they find the time? I say, if there's anything you want a leader to do, anything, the spreadsheets, the meetings, the shareholders, the all of those other things, if there's anything that you want a leader to do, it's to lead the people. And I would say that their first priority, the spreadsheets can wait. All of those extra tasks come second to them developing the people that are actually doing the work. So if we are now considering, oh my gosh, I have so many things to do, that how do I have time to have check-ins, or how do I have time to build trust with the employees that I'm leading, then we've flipped the entire priority of what it is to be a people leader. The number one requirement as a people leader and the number one flex for a business in keeping employees and keeping the talent you can't afford to lose is that I want to show up. I'm loyal to my boss. I want to show up every day and I want to give my best because I desire to do that because I have a relationship with my boss that requires it, right? Or maybe not requires it. That might be a little brash, but that excites it, that influences it. I want to do the best for this person because I believe in them and they believe in me, right? So trust, I think, is a two-way street, right? And sometimes when it comes to trust, we might be the person who is more apt to give it and allow you to remind me a reason why I shouldn't versus a person who you have to earn it, right? And so I'm always going to land on the side as a people person and a person that assumes positive intent everyone. I'm going to give you that trust meter, right? All the way at 100% until there's a reason that I have to pull it back. And hopefully there never is, right? But I'm always going to give you that full trust to start. And so I don't I caution people if you lead from a mindset of that you have to earn that. And with every good deed comes a little bit more and a little bit more, right? It's a slippery slope for sure, a slippery slope with trust.
Yes. So a few thoughts that I have on there. One is I'm just going to address the elephant in the room that we have we have allowed organizations across the US to put more production requirements, meaning productivity and getting the job done. We've put more production requirements on managers
Hmm.
because we said people can just, lead themselves and be accountable for their work and they don't need a people leader. And so I definitely see that pendulum. We're starting to swing that back now and say,
Right.
oh, that came back to bite us, that we got rid of time for managers to be managers. So for my executive friends on the call, these are very real conversations that we have to be having about the workloads and the roles and responsibilities on the job description for people in people leader positions, because I'm getting inundated with chats and Q&A right now of how in the world do we find time to do this because we
Yeah.
don't have the time? How do we truly connect with the people, like to be 100% present when your phone's going off and your email's blowing up and oh, somebody knocks on the door in the middle of your get together, right? I understand the real world and what is happening. And so part of it is the organizations uh, definitely have to recalibrate the
Right.
reasonable. That's kind of
Absolutely.
my phrase right now. They have to recalibrate to
A
reasonable.
reasonable.
And for leaders, one other trick, not only is it about how often you check in with them, but it does not have to be an hour. It doesn't even have to be 30 minutes. It could be,
No.
ideally, it's going to be 10. If it has to be, it could be 5. And some more people are asking for clarity here. Again, if you go into magnetvault.com and you get the employee check-in guide that we have there, it does have specific questions, but we tried to do it in a way that is not so formal. So
Mhm.
yes, you want to schedule time and tell people that you are available to them. It's okay in my mind. Some might disagree with this. It's okay in my mind if they want to cancel or if they say, good, I don't need to meet this time. I'll talk to
Mm.
you next time. It's more about building that trust so that they know that they can have your attention at 2:10 on Tuesday. If they need you, that you will be there for them at that time. And so making it less formal. You don't want it to be like their performance review of, so how are things? And be careful how you answer. You don't want
Right.
anybody to feel that way. But when you tell folks that you are starting this process of implementing these check-ins, which are very much like what you might be familiar with called stay interviews, checking
Hmm.
in with people to say, why do you stay? What do you love about your job? What's frustrating? Is there anything I can do to lessen the frustration? Those kind of questions are on that list. And so if you let people know that you are doing this process, you're going to be more accessible, you're going to create this schedule for some check-ins, but you're doing it to be more available for them and to create that better place to work and to provide more consistency for them in communication. I think they're gonna love that. They're usually thrilled to have that opportunity. So that's that's really great way to do that is be less formal about it and more conversational. And I do think consistency is a key of building trust because every time you say even just ambiguous language like, I'll try to get to that by the end of the day,
Mm,
they heard, "I'll get to that by the end of the day," even though you
right.
said, "Try to get to that by the end of the day." So be really careful of those words, "I'll try," "I might be able to," "I hope to," "Well, I'll see what I can do," and really go to more clear clarifying language of if I don't get that done today, I will be sure that it happens first thing tomorrow, or
Yeah,
tell them
right.
what the next step or any barriers, right? If you say, I don't know if I can make that happen, but here is what step I'm going to take to check on it and to see. So that can really help a lot with trust and everything too. My
Yeah,
goodness,
communication is
time is
key with trust,
flying.
1000%.
Yes, awesome. Okay, so we've got to wrap up here, Shalonda. Holy moly.
Oh my
Um,
God.
I know, right? We could talk about this for days. So, what is one final kind of piece of advice that you have for getting to know your folks, for building trust, for creating that better connection with people or among people on your team? What's one big takeaway that you want to leave folks with?
I I would say many of us grew up on the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated, right? And that's a great sentiment. Listen, I still would tell my kids that. But recently I was challenged by that because I'll give you an example. I worked in a call center at one time. And so me being a high personality, kind of a cheerleader type individual, they put me on this team recognition group. And so our responsibility was that in the call center, there would be monthly people who scored really well on their calls once the recording was listened back by their leaders, and they would get scored out of a 10 on their level of customer service, right? They would go through the QA, and there would be folks who would win certain recognition or awards based upon their scores. So our cheer team was tasked with how are we going to celebrate these people, right? And so for me, I had the plan. I was ready, ladies and gentlemen. I was ready. I said, okay, I want you all to envision men in black. We're going to get some sunglasses. We're going to get some black t shirts. We're going to put a boom box on our shoulder, and we are going to run the length of the call center floor 2, 3 times to get everyone's attention and get us all on par. And then we're going to weave and ebb and flow through the rows of cubicles until we finally land on top of the person who has won. And we're going to cheer and celebrate and make sure that everybody sees it. Yeah. Because that's how I would love to be recognized and awarded.
To know. Good to know.
Good to know. But the first time that we did that, and we landed on this young woman's desk, and I saw her literally physically slink down into her chair as if she could not have been more embarrassed and mortified in her life.
Oh, poor
I'll,
thing.
I'll never forget it. It's a sight that's burned into my memory forever. At that moment, I remembered, man, maybe the platinum rule is the better way to go. So if you haven't heard, the platinum rule is the level up from the golden rule, and it is to treat others how they want to be treated, how they want to be treated. So if you as a leader get to know your people, you will know when you have the Shalondas who want the boombox and the men in black costumes celebration. And you will know when you have the Jessicas who would prefer a simple handwritten note in an envelope slid under their keyboard, and you don't mention it, they don't mention it, and we act as if it never happened. And both of those ways are amazing, but you have to know which way to cater your leadership style to the individuals that you've been given to lead. It is a blessing to lead other human beings to any common goal, but it is also a challenge. And your strategy and how you do that will absolutely determine whether you keep people or whether you repel others. And as most of us in my generation grew up on Dr. Phil saying, "How's that working for you?" I would ask you and I would push back when we say, "But where do we find the time?" There's nothing more important to find time for than investing and getting to know your people.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Can we get some love in the chat for Shalonda and how amazing she is? You all can see her energy, her passion, and why she is one of our most requested keynote speakers and trainers on our Magnet Culture team. So thank you so much for that insight. And before you all go, I know everybody's got calls coming up probably in 9 minutes, but make sure that you register for our next webinar. All right. Our next webinar is going to be, look at the love coming in. I love it. Our next webinar is going to be Friday, July 26th at noon Eastern. And we are, as I mentioned, going to be going into the concept of self-awareness and how do we leverage self-awareness in the workplace. Shalonda talked about, knowing yourself as well as knowing others. And so the self-awareness conversations, we're going to be diving into different assessment tools and different philosophies over the next several months. And so that July webinar, Elena Thomas, our Gen Z trainer and speaker, is going to come back to join me and talk about leveraging that self-awareness skill and tool within your team and your organization. So if we did not get to your question, which I think we got most of them, please message me on LinkedIn. And if we're not already connected, please connect with me. I'm the only Cara Silletto out there. And of course, follow Magnet Culture on LinkedIn as well. And you're welcome to reach out with any additional questions. I'd be happy to answer those one-on-one after this webinar as well. So don't forget, we have a special offer. And, as we've discussed today, the disconnect between leaders in the front line, it doesn't get better by itself over time. In fact, it can get worse. So if you're already struggling with issues, you do not want to wait another 6 to 12 months before addressing that. And unfortunately, it's going to cause turnover if it's not addressed fast enough. So organizations really need to put a stop to this growing disconnect and make sure that you're offering your leaders the right kind of training and tools to bridge these gaps and to build trust and connection with folks. So if you are on this webinar today, we're going to offer you $500 off of any of our half day or full day sessions around the leadership topics of communication, feedback, conflict resolution, those particular classes that are really good tools for building that trust and connection. So these 3 classes in particular are part of our Leadership Essentials series of sessions that you do not want your leaders to miss. So call us today if you want to get that $500 off of any of those classes. And you can book a call with Jess Ray, who is back on our team, and she is ready to set up a time that you can get that scheduled and figure out exactly what your team needs to better retain the staff that we cannot afford to lose. All right. So also, if you want to book Shalonda or myself or Elena or any of our great, amazing speakers and trainers, you can also reach out to myself or Jess Ray at jess@magnetculture.com. And you guys, better leaders mean improved retention. So quit losing people just because of misunderstandings and mistrust, and make sure that your leaders are equipped to communicate effectively and grow your team. Thank you all so much for your time investing in yourself and your development today, because now you will be a better leader for your folks and be a better retention champion for your team. So we'll see you on the next Magnet Culture webinar, and have a wonderful week. We'll see you later. Thanks, everyone.